What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Tuesday, April 4th, 2017, getting into the week. We've got so much to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, but please don't call in unless it's important because we got a lot of stuff to cover today. Obviously, today is the anniversary of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, and so we put up a couple of articles about that, including one of our own, which showed that the witnesses to the shooting, remember that iconic photo of these men standing over Dr. King's body on the balcony at the Lorraine Motel, and they're all pointing in exactly the same direction, and we were told throughout the years they're pointing at the rooming house where James Earl Ray lay in ambush with his rifle, and of course it turned out, no, they were actually pointing to the roof of the building next door. And the fact of the matter is that in this day and age, most Americans don't believe the official story, well, about almost anything, and that includes Martin Luther King. And they really do think that the FBI was probably behind it, or at least covering it up. And they're looking at the story of James Earl Ray, whose government-appointed attorney suggested he plead guilty and he would be given a light sentence. And, of course, he pled guilty, was sentenced to life without parole, wanted to withdraw the plea, and the judge wouldn't let him do it. And there is actually evidence that James Earl Ray was a patsy, because the rifle planted on James Earl Ray, when it was test-fired, it turned out it has a manufacturing defect, and it leaves deep gouges on every single bullet fired through that rifle, and the bullets recovered from the body of Dr. Martin Luther King did not have those gouges. And there was a ballistics test, and the FBI said, no, the gun wasn't cleaned properly, and that's the only problem. And they tried to get another test, and the court stalled until James Earl Ray passed away in prison of an illness that he could have been treated for had he been released, at which point the court said nobody has standing to sue the FBI over this rifle issue, and that was it. The official story cemented in position. But these days, people are looking back. I mean, the FBI's harassment and threats against Dr. King are well documented. A lot of it came out as part of the COINTELPRO scandal. J. Edgar Hoover hated Dr. King, thought he was a communist because he was opposed to war. So it's kind of an open record that the FBI was definitely hostile to him. Now, the big story, although you wouldn't know it to look at the corporate media, is the revelation that Susan Rice ordered the unmasking of the Trump team in intelligence gathered by NSA, CIA, FBI. Now, the issue of unmasking is very touchy, because when surveillance is providing information about who's calling who and who's talking to who, U.S. citizen names are supposed to be masked, and they're simply referred to as U.S. Citizen 1, U.S. Citizen 2, and then with an appropriate warrant, you are allowed to get the name behind that. But there's a whole process to go through to try and protect the privacy of Americans, and Susan Rice just bypassed that completely. And so she's out there trying to back off the thing, say it's nothing to it, and the corporate media is in absolute goose step trying to make this thing go away here. Now, apparently, former U.S. Attorney Joseph DeGenova is out there saying that Susan Rice was the one who ordered spy agencies to produce detailed spreadsheets involving Donald Trump's perfectly legal phone calls, involving Donald Trump and his aides when he was running for president. And DeGenova is out there saying this has got nothing to do with national security. This is clearly a political spy operation. And it's blown a hole in that wall between national security and partisan politics. Now, it's already being called a new Watergate. It has been for a while. Here's the important thing to keep in mind. The White House does not do investigations. They do not do criminal investigations, They do not do intelligence investigations. Susan Rice's job as the National Security Advisor is to let FBI and NSA do the investigations, and they provide the conclusions to her. And you need to remember that. Because Susan Rice isn't supposed to be conducting her own investigation. And right now, imagine the intelligence agencies are very upset because this spying on Trump and his associates was sold to them on this bogus claim that Russia and Trump were in cahoots together, for which there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever, and even Fox News is out there saying, no, there's nothing there. Adam Schiff is saying, no, there's no evidence, but we believe it, therefore it must be true. But we're hearing from people like Representative Ron DeSantis in Florida saying Rice should face criminal investigation. Rand Paul is saying that she absolutely must be called to testify before Congress under oath. And it's amazing to see the corporate media. They're out there saying, oh, it's a partisan witch hunt. There's no evidence. And which is kind of funny because evidence was not a concern when they were out there trying to sell us this story about Donald Trump and two prostitutes in the Moscow hotel. But you can almost smell the fear and panic coming on in. We're going to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. We're talking about the new Watergate scandal and the bombshell that Susan Rice, Barack Obama's national security advisor, was conducting political spying on Donald Trump while he was running for president. Now, apparently, State Department insiders have known about this for some time. They've been talking about it, and basically Trump's pick to be NATO ambassador, Richard Grenell, is out there saying there's no way that Obama did not know this was being done. And we know Obama had this track record of claiming not to know what was going on when the IRS targeting scandal came on out. He said, I found out about it on TV. Doop-de-doop-de-doo. I'm a dummy. I'm innocent of wrongdoing, but I'm a dummy. I have no clue what's going on in my own administration. Tucker Carlson is out there saying it is time to drop the euphemisms. When you are monitoring the conversations of your political opponents, it isn't incidental collection, it is spying. And John Bolton is also one of those who thinks Susan Rice defrauded the intelligence system by ginning up this Russia hacking, Russian interference, Trump and Russia in cahoots to get them to go along with this. And Bolton is saying Susan Rice has got serious legal problems right now. And Obama is now out of office, can't intercede on her behalf, can't pardon her, and Trump certainly is not going to pardon her. Now, over at Observer.com, apparently a lot of people inside the intelligence community are disgusted by what happened. And they're coming on out and saying, on multiple occasions, Rice asked the NSA to do things they regarded as unethical and perhaps illegal. And when the NSA is having problems doing something about spying and snooping, you know it's got to be really, really off the end of the rules. And apparently there were some serious, often loud discussions where the NSA was saying, we're not allowed to do this, and Rice said, you will do it, you will do it. So Judge Napolitano was out there saying Susan Rice has committed espionage against Donald Trump, against Donald Trump's aides, campaign workers, apparently also against Sean Hannity, Eric Prince. They were spying on everybody without any legal justification just because they could get away with it. Now, Susan Rice is in full defense mode. She's out there saying, and this is a direct quote from the former National Security Advisor, I leaked nothing to nobody. And apparently in the Obama administration, good English has went. Because that's a double negative, which may be her way of saying I didn't really lie because the double negative means that I did leak something to somebody or I leaked everything to everybody. And here is the real damage, because all of these spreadsheets and everything, by virtue of that last-minute change in the Obama administration, it's all shared with all the other intelligence agencies. Blacklisted News is saying that Trump was spied on for up to a year before the inauguration. all the way through the campaign. And the corporate media is trying to pretend this isn't there. I mean, most real journalists dream of coming across a Watergate-style story that will make them famous and wealthy from book and movie royalties. And the corporate media are just absolutely on the defensive here. They're not asking any questions about what Susan Rice did or anything. They're on the attack against Nunes. Who told you? Who leaked out this information that we were doing this? And the attitude is clearly, it's okay for us to behave this way, but it's wrong for you to talk about it. Now, Mike Cernovich, who is a main player in this story, is out there saying that he was getting this information from Bloomberg and New York Times. And those two entities refused to run the story to protect the Obama administration, to protect the insiders, to protect the Hillary campaign in case she wants to run again in 2020. And apparently some of the reporters within Bloomberg and the New York Times were just disgusted at this. And they're starting to leak. But if you go on the corporate media, they are absolutely joined at the hip. They're trying to make believe this is a non-story. It's just nuts. How could you even pay attention to just something so outrageously silly as one political party spying on another? Over on CNN tonight, Don Lemon came on out there literally begging viewers to ignore the Susan Rice story. Say, there's nothing there. It's illegitimate. We're not going to go with it. Where is the proof? Where is the evidence? Well, there's a lot of proof and there's a lot of evidence. There's a huge paper trail. There are other people who have now come forward and said, yes, we knew this was going on. And all of a sudden, the corporate media is making a big deal about, we want to see evidence. And you contrast that with how they've been handling all these allegations about Russia hacked the DNC and Russia rigged the election and Russia and Donald Trump are working together. Evidence wasn't a factor for them back then. The double standard and hypocrisy is on full display. Going on back to CNN, Chris Cuomo is out there saying the Susan Rice report, it's a fake scandal. It's a fake scandal. They're making a big, those Republicans, they're making a big deal out of nothing. This sort of thing goes on all the time. MSNBC, though, jumped the shark on this one. MSNBC host Katie Tur basically came out and said that anybody who reports on the story is helping Russia undermine our democratic institutions. If you're a patriot, you will ignore the scandal. You look at the other scandals we tell you to pay attention to, but you don't look at this one. I mean, that doesn't even make sense. And, of course, if they're going to such extremes, even their most devoted viewers are going to be having that palm-to-forehead moment and say, what the heck is going on? Now, again, MSNBC, Andrea Mitchell gave Susan Rice an interview this morning. Pure puff piece, pure on Susan Rice's side, nothing challenging about it whatsoever. And you need to remember, Andrea Mitchell is married to Alan Greenspan. She is as much a part of the swamp of D.C. as any of these other players. And she was out there trying to protect Susan Rice. Susan Rice was out there saying, well, you know, it's necessary for us to investigate it. But again, remember, the White House function, they don't do investigations. They don't do criminal investigations. They don't do intelligence investigations. That's other departments within the government. Now, there was one awkward moment when Andrea Mitchell asked Susan Rice if she's willing to testify before Congress, as Rand Paul has suggested. And Rice froze up, started stammering and stuttering, and then changed the subject to Russia. We've got to put the focus back on Russia. We've got to put the focus back on Russia and Donald Trump and all of that. And you want to know how panicked they are getting, how desperate they're getting. Okay? There was actually a corporate media outlet that was saying that this attack on Susan Rice is only because Republicans hate and fear black women. That's it. Now, the only reason we're looking at this spying on Donald Trump's campaign is we're all a bunch of racists. So this is 1,000 times Watergate already. And it's not going to go away. They're trying to distract from it. Oh, boy, are they trying to distract from it. Now, here's an important point. Maxine Waters, back in 2013, told Roland Martin that Obama had a secret database on everyone. And apparently Roland had said to her, you better get what you can while Obama is there. Not sure what the context of that latter part was. But Maxine Waters admitted there was this database Obama assembled on everyone, not just Trump, not just Sean Hannity, not just Eric Prince, everybody. Jerome Corsi is out there saying that he's seen leaked documents showing the NSA spied on Trump going all the way back to 2004. Now, story coming out of 12160, computer logs left behind, remember those are work records, they have to be saved, show that Susan Rice accelerated the intelligence gathering on Trump after the election. And what that tells us is that they engaged in this behavior, a new Watergate, in the sure and certain knowledge that by cheating the election, cheating the voters, Hillary was going to be president and they didn't have to worry about any investigations coming up. Then when Trump and the American people overcame the election fraud, they hit the panic button. And they're trying to find anything on Trump to keep him tangled up, to keep him from going this direction. Apparently, intelligence officials do not want to talk about the surveillance of the Trump team for fear of their methods becoming known. No, actually, they don't want to talk about it because some of them are looking at serious jail time for this. By the way, Susan Rice is married to ABC's executive producer, Ian Cameron. So now we have a good idea where the corporate media got the intelligence leaks about Michael Flynn, which was illegal. They're playing dirty out there. All right, let's grab a phone call. Anthony in California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Yes, I haven't called in a while. I just was wondering, has President Trump replaced his NSA and CIA people in regards to this spy thing?
Well, not yet, but he really ought to. In fact, this is a tremendous opportunity for Donald Trump to go on the offensive. And for whoever is monitoring this show on behalf of the Trump administration, this is a good opportunity to regain the initiative and start going on the offensive, expose all this dirt that's been going on, and start firing people and throwing some of them in jail. If you don't act decisively if Trump does not act decisively now, then his opposition is just going to keep on playing these dirty tricks on him. They think they can get away with this. One of the reasons we have these abuses in high positions is the long history of being able to get away from it. Look at the Clintons and all that they've gotten away with over the last 30 years. It's time to bring it to a halt.
I agree, Michael. Thanks for telling me that. When you talk about this spying on Americans, I think I was just hacked into. I was hacked into this secure server. I play a game, and they tell me that the game that I play is a secure server, and somehow funds were transferred from one account to the other. And I know Big Brother's watching me, so this is why I called in.
Okay, well, yeah, you're on the air. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to let you go because we've got to take a commercial break here. But, yeah, there's a lot of cybercrime and hacking going on right now, and the NSA can't do a thing to stop it, neither can the FBI. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Now, again, looking at this Susan Rice story, this might break the back of what remains of the corporate media's credibility because Americans are seeing this incredible double standard. There is a huge amount of evidence of wrongdoing during this election campaign on the part of the Hillary campaign, Susan Rice, Obama, the Democratic National Committee, but we don't care. We don't care. We don't see it. You can't make us do it. And they're still pushing the Russia story, even though there's no evidence. Just believe as we tell you to believe. And that obvious double standard of we don't need evidence to blame Russia and we refuse to talk about Susan Rice until the evidence is overwhelming. But, like I said, Adam Schiff is now admitting there is zero evidence that Russia and Trump were working together. There is zero evidence that Russia hacked the DNC emails. There is zero evidence that Russia somehow tampered with our elections. Fox News was out there early today. I mean, it's been 5 months since the election. And Fox News basically came on out and said the Kremlin did not tinker with our elections. The Russian intelligence agencies did not tinker with our elections. Russian internet trolls, paid and unpaid, that may mean me, did not tinker with the election. Santa Claus did not tinker with the election. The Easter Bunny did not tinker with the election. Get over it. The hate-mongering has never been more obvious. In fact, Matt Taibbi over at Rolling Stone has a wonderful article. Putin derangement syndrome arrives. And what he's saying is basically this blame Russia, Russia Trump has become a self-sustaining delusion. Now, right now, only about 14% of Republicans still think there's any issue there. Almost 70% of Democrats are still buying into this thing because nobody wants to be the one to stand up and say that this particular emperor has no clothes. And so it's just taken on a life of its own. Now, the Center for American Progress Action Fund, which is the sister advocacy organization of the George Soros-funded Center for American Progress, has launched a project to raise money to try and prove that Donald Trump, Russian prostitutes, golden shower dossier, even though it's been completely discredited. And they're out there saying, we're going to uncover the truth. No, they're going to manufacture another frame-up is what they're going to do. All right, we're going to grab a quick phone call here. Alfred in Utah, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Michael.
Yes.
I have a tape I heard from, what's that called? Rush Limbaugh. I can't just believe what I heard. I want to share it with your listeners to play that. Is about that.
No, we can't. We can't do that. That's copyright violation.
Can I say what he said?
Yes.
That lady said.
Yes.
Okay. In Warsaw, in October, she goes there, part of the NATO things, and she openly says that if Donald Trump will be elected president, don't worry, because we can, what's that called there? We can impeach him, and he would not last very long.
This is Susan Rice you're talking about.
No, I'm talking about that Evelyn farce.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yes. Rush Limbaugh said that because my wife listened to Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity, and then Rush Limbaugh said that, but Sean Hannity, it seems, not aware of this. So this is, Rush Limbaugh called it a really mind-boggling evidence that I've got it today, and with high-quality sound. That's all.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone.
To me, excuse me. To me, it's like in a Middle Eastern countries, it's like staging a coup.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what Hillary and her people are trying to do, is figure out some way they can get away with a coup d'etat against Donald Trump. And, they're obviously in panic and desperation and thrash mode, which is not a good thing. Anyway, Alfred, got to let you go. Got to take another break for commercials.
Okay,
we'll be right back after these few words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Now, in deciding about Susan Rice and whether she was being honest with Andrea Mitchell, you need to remember Susan Rice was one of the key architects of the story that the attack on the consulate in Benghazi was a protest against video, which turned out not to exist. So this lady is a professional liar. In fact, it's hard to find anybody in politics who do not see their job as doing that, lying to the people for profit, whether it's politicians or public relations. It's all the same thing here. Now, Natural News has, they're covering this as well. They've got multiple sources saying that this mass surveillance, which began a full year before the 2016 election, likely included surveillance of other candidates as well. So they were spying on all of them to make sure that Hillary got that White House. And the fact that she didn't is why they're in such a panic. And apparently the way they were trying to do this is they ginned up this whole Russia thing. They said, we need surveillance on these foreign people that seem to be working for Russia. And what they were actually doing is they created a list of people they knew Donald Trump was talking to just in the course of business. He's a businessman. He's got interests all over the world. And then they could claim that getting the Trump side of the conversations was incidental copying. And then they would unmask the names. And because of that executive order that Barack Obama signed, this information was shared with all 17 intelligence agencies, knowing that an Obama-friendly worker would then leak it to the corporate media, which is what happened. All of this damaging information about, oh, Donald Trump's choice for this and that was linked to this and that and the rest of it was a smear campaign. It's on the same moral level as that IRS targeting scandal. So then, now, getting on back to other people's corruptions. This is a very interesting story. It's coming out of, hang on a second, I'm not sure about this one. There are a whole bunch of new websites that have been created to put out bogus stories. And a lot of them begin U.S. politics, and there's U.S. politics today, U.S. politics now, U.S. Politics whatever, and they all appear to be trying to just jam things up here. And by the way, that's why we're seeing all of a sudden terror attacks all over, sarin gas attacks in Syria. They're trying to throw so much stuff out there to the news so the corporate media doesn't have to report on Susan Rice, and hoping to distract people away. More about that a little bit later. Anyway, Judicial Watch has obtained 695 pages of the Obama IRS scandal documents. And the documents were made available following a Freedom of Information Act request lawsuit filed by Judicial Watch in 2015. Because every time they make a Freedom of Information Act request, it's denied, even though the law is very clear that only in the case of military secrets and the invasion of personal privacy, those are the only exemptions to freedom of information. So anyway, the documents prove the Internal Revenue Service had selected political groups applying for tax-exempt status for intensive scrutiny based on their names or political themes. And of course, the FBI in 2014 told Fox News that its investigation had found no evidence that anything was going on here. Remember when Lois Lerner's hard drive just mysteriously crashed and, oh gee shuckies, there wasn't any backup. So James Comey was covering up for Obama's misuse of the IRS, and so was Loretta Lynch, because the Justice Department declared there would be no criminal charges in this case. All right, let's grab Clint in Las Vegas. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike, I just want to let you know I sent you an email about that from the previous caller about Farkas predicting Trump's impeachment. And it was posted up on Breitbart, and I sent you a link.
Okay.
Okay, and I was watching Fox News, and they had this congressman on there, and he brought up a good point, and then I'll let you go. Susan Rice has no jurisdiction investigating anything. She's the National Security Advisor.
That's the point I was making earlier in the show. The White House does not do investigations, either criminal or intelligence. That's for the FBI and the other intelligence agencies to do, or the Justice Department in the case of criminal investigations. And so there's no justification for Susan Rice to have done what she did.
So But if it comes out, and I can see where this is going, they were trying to frame Trump as a Russian asset.
Yeah,
That's what they were trying to do.
Well, they were trying to claim that there was collusion. That's what they sold to the intelligence agencies to get them to go along with this spying. And I imagine there's probably a lot of people inside CIA and NSA and FBI who are furious right now because they're going to get tarnished with this new Watergate, and they got snookered by Obama and Susan Rice, and they've got to be very unhappy about that right now, which apparently there's a bunch of new leaked information coming on out. This is all going to fall apart real quick.
Yeah, it's a lot of people are fed up from the Hillary server thing, too. No, this is all Hillary. This is the Clintons and Bush team. So I'll let you go, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot here. We're going to switch to Mark in North Carolina. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I have some real strong suspicions right now. This stuff coming out of Syria now.
Yes.
That's God supposedly gets his own people again.
Or even the Russian metro bombing. Even the Russian metro bombing just create a distraction to try and keep people from paying attention to this scandal. Change the story, change the focus. Now, the corporate media is going to go along with that, but the independent media isn't. That's why we are the independent media.
No, because I don't trust the CIA and all the other intelligence community. I don't trust Comey. However, the problem is, on my way home, I heard a news snippet. You know, one of these at the hour. Normally, I don't even listen, but this one was about the Syrian deal, and evidently, Spicer opened his big fat mouth talking about, well, this isn't. Obama had taken care of things in 2012 when he drew the red line, as if this was the Syrian gas attack was real then, and it was real. It was as real then as it is real now. Okay, I'd say I'm 100% sure Assad is not behind gassing his own people.
Of course he isn't.
Not 99.
You know, it was another variation on the theme of Saddam has nukes and Spain sank the USS Maine and North Vietnam is shooting at our patrol boats, violating their territorial waters.
Warned back when the Maine was sunk, so I can't say for sure, but as far as like the patrol boats and all that, and Saddam's so-called WMDs, we know where that is. But what worries me... Before we go
on, just want to insert a little historical footnote. Do you know who Admiral Hyman G. Rickover was?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, he was the father of our nuclear navy. He was the guy who single-handedly said we have to go to nuclear power for our submarines and for some of our surface ships, like the carriers. And he conducted his own investigation of the sinking of the USS Maine. And he basically said that Captain Sigsbee had been telling the truth about an onboard fire that touched off an ammunition magazine. There was no Spanish mine. But, you know, the newspapers of the day, the Hearst newspapers, said, oh, those dastardly Spanish, and we were off into the Spanish-American War.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, okay, you know, I'll buy it. You know, I can understand it. I mean, this government is, you know, very manipulative, and in a certain way, it's very evil. And it's been that way.
They always have been, and people need to wake up and realize that's how this government controls us: lies, fraud, and deception. And that's exactly what's going on today.
Well, we got to make sure we don't get bought, that we don't get into this Syrian deal now. I mean, just as Trump made it clear he doesn't want to get involved in it. Just as they said they're not going to, you know, we're not going to ship weapons to these terrorist organizations anymore, this conveniently happens too. And just after John McCain was over there meeting with terrorist leaders and all that, personally, I think McCain should be arrested and probably put in a mental institution rather than jail. So I think the man is stark raving mad.
Well, he's drunk on power. He's drunk on corruption. He's absolutely convinced he can do whatever he wants and get away with it. I mean, you know, what harm did he suffer following the Keating 5 scandal? You know, he's still a member of Congress. You know, and these people, unfortunately, really do believe they can do anything and say anything, and nothing bad will happen to them. They're a protected class, and that is certainly not what was intended by the founding fathers of this nation.
Well, his POW status keeps protecting him too, I think.
Yeah, but that's been exposed as a hoax. He was treated very well as a POW. He was not tortured, and apparently he cooperated with his captors. He made Tokyo Rose style audio broadcasts saying, yes, the United States is the pirates and the invader and the criminal. And if Richard Nixon hadn't issued a blanket pardon for all the returning POWs, McCain was going to be charged with treason.
Well, the only thing I got to ask you about that is this. Supposedly the Vietnamese offered to let him go if he said certain things, being that they wanted to do it as a favor to his father, who they thought maybe making a deal like that might end the war early.
Yes.
And McCain said, no, he's going to stay. You believe that, or you think that's made up?
Well, I think it's a very murky story. I think the North Vietnamese wanted to curry favor with Admiral McCain, not so much to end the war early, but to basically get him to not bomb certain areas where he thought his son might be.
Oh, okay. But you don't think they really offered to let him go early?
I don't know one way or the other. I've heard the story, but it's murky back then. I mean, we're talking Vietnam.
Plus, you had an aircraft carrier that was almost destroyed, I think.
Yeah.
McCain was hot rodding, or he didn't know how to fly his plane properly, or something.
No, he knew how to fly his plane properly, but he was goofing off. He was doing a wet start, which was something that the naval aviators aren't supposed to do, but they like to do it because it makes a big bang and a flash, and it'll scare the heck out of the pilot who's in line behind them. And unfortunately, McCain's wet start touched off a rocket on the trailing plane, and it took off and hit an ammo dump on the carrier deck, and they almost lost the carrier there. But, Daddy protected his son in that case here. But, McCain has lost and destroyed so many aircraft, I think he only needs one more to qualify as an enemy ace.
What aircraft carrier was it anyway?
I think it may have been the Forrestal.
Forrestal?
Yeah.
Funny, that's odd that it would be named the Forrestal, because there's a lot of odd things about that former Secretary of State Forrestal too.
Yeah.
Including that he may have had knowledge of space aliens.
He may have been suicide. Well, the space alien thing is a cover for what was really going on there. Anyway, listen, we're going to let you go. I need to get on back to the news. We've got a lot of stuff here. So thank you, Mark. We're going to let you go. Now then, Donald Trump made a campaign promise when he was running for the presidency, and he said, I'm not going to keep my salary as president. I don't need the money. And today he kept his word. He basically donated his entire first quarter salary as president to the National Park Service. And, of course, the liberals are out there screaming, oh, my goodness, let's see, I'm sorry, I'm reading something from the control room. All right, now then, getting on back to the news, this circus, this circus over Gorsuch. I'm sorry for the interruption, but I'm having to communicate with my control room, with Mike in the control room. And because we're both named Mike, we get really confused looking at the screens. Anyway, Gorsuch did win his approval from the Senate panel on party line vote. This has zero to do with Gorsuch's qualifications and everything to do with, there we are, everything to do with the partisan politics, the gotchas, the turf wars, and so forth. But he won the confirmation from the Senate panel. Now it's proceeding to the full Senate. The Democrats are threatening a filibuster. The GOP is threatening to invoke what's called the nuclear option, where they'll only need a simple majority to put Gorsuch over the top. And, of course, the Democrats are screaming it's undemocratic to have a simple majority decide. So they're screaming about the rules again, trying to figure out some way that they can get what they want by changing the rules. Because they don't actually believe in rules being firm and inviolable. And Susan Rice just demonstrated that's how they think. All righty, moving on here. I love this story that came on out This was in techeye.net. The United States government is now proposing a mandatory public school curriculum to train kids how to detect and ignore what they're calling fake news. And one of the criteria that kids are going to be taught is that if you see a story that says it's telling you something the media does not want you to know, that's almost certainly going to be fake. You know, like the fact that Saddam didn't really have nuclear weapons. So they're trying to get ahead of the ball and propagandize kids to only trust ABC, CNN, NBC, PBS, NPR, and the newspapers. And I don't think it's going to work. The damage is already done. I think parents are going to say to their kids, just tell the teacher what the teacher wants to hear so you get the good grade, but here's the reality of what's going on. Americans are the most lied to people on the face of planet Earth. And that is what the corporate media's job is, to lie you, to lie to you, to sell you the next policy, the next tax, the next car, the next candidate. That's what they're in the business of doing, getting you to do things you otherwise would not want to do. Now, over in Russia, and maybe even that Russian metro bombing was an attempt to head off coverage of the Susan Rice story, because that broke over the weekend, and it's been gaining ground. They have now identified the suicide bomber, and it turns out he's a Kyrgyz-born Russian citizen, Akbarzon Jalilov, and they're looking for 2 other people who may have been working with him. We've got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Let's get a couple of phone calls out of the way before we get back to the news here. I believe it's pronounced 8th in Montana. How do you say that?
No, Mike, it's Keith.
Oh, it's Keith. Okay, there was a typo on the screen. Okay, Keith in Montana. Okay, Keith. I know who you are now. Welcome back to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hey, I just want to ad-lib something here. When I heard all this stuff about Syria and stuff, I started Googling all the images of where the U.S. had brokered a deal with Russia to remove all of Syria's chemical weapons. The ship that was down there in the Texas harbor that had returned after its incineration of those weapons. And I'm going, well, you know, if someone got allegedly gassed over in Syria, it wasn't from Syria because all their weapons were removed, and you know, as a flashback.
Well, come on here. I mean, does it make any sense? I mean, Trump and Tillerson indicate that it's okay for Assad to stay on as head of Syria, assuming he wins the next election. And, of course, the war hawks go into an absolute fury. I mean, you know, Assad has got to be feeling very good right now. He's winning the war against all of these rebels. Why does he need to gas his own people? There's no motive for him to do that. You know, it undermines Donald Trump. It undermines Tillerson. It is clearly not coming from Syria.
Isn't that kind of pathetic, though?
Yeah, it is pathetic. But right now, I mean, I am sensing so much panic from within the current establishment because they've lost control of the minds of America. This war agenda has turned out to be an absolute nightmare. And they don't know what to do other than to keep on doing what they've always done before. And it's leading us into a disaster.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, I keep thinking of all the people that are going to be suckered into this that, you know, like the falling for the crap of throwing your babies on the fire of someone else, you know. Yeah,
it is nonsense, but people don't buy this stuff anymore. Every time another one of these stories come on out, they say, oh, this is just another variation on Saddam has nukes.
Yeah, I was trying to think, was it Noam Chomsky that had written that Manufacturing Consent?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's how bad it's getting. You know, they're just a pure propaganda. They just won't quit, you know.
Yeah, but the more outrageous the lies get, the more they're undermining their own credibility. I mean, think about this one where MSNBC is saying that anybody reporting on the Susan Rice story is helping Russia undermine our democratic institutions. That doesn't even really make any sense at all. And people are going to listen to that and say, are these people on drugs? And if so, why aren't they sharing?
I took your advice off yesterday's show, by the way.
Which advice was that?
I changed my dogs are loyal ones on Twitter to H2O boy for Putin.
Okay.
Just you and Claire, okay.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We got to take a break for station identification. Back with 2 more phone calls, and then we're going to close the lines because I got a bunch of news to get to. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2, and we're going to take 1 more phone call. Then we're going to close the lines for a bit because I do have a lot of news to get through today. Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. Hey, Mike, if you ever donate your body to science, you're going to find your brain has got a lot of weight to it because you're a very smart man.
Oh, well, thank you very much. And, I do plan on donating my body to science when I die because I figure medical students can always use a good laugh.
Yeah, you got critical thinking skills, which it's sad to say less than half of this country don't have. The Congress and Senate don't have.
Well,
past couple presidents don't have.
Unfortunately, our leaders are not chosen for their intelligence, just for how well they're able to lie to the public.
Yeah, was it Gerald Celente who said show business for ugly people, isn't it?
Yes, he did, and that's a good description for it, show business for ugly people.
Hey, Mike, on Russia, now, the second bomb, they're saying, well, the theory is the second bomb didn't go off because supposedly they jammed the cell phone signal. That's possible, right?
Yeah, it's definitely possible. And if they were aware that a cell phone was being used to trigger it, all they need to do is basically shut off the nearby cell towers or have a portable jammer. The danger with using a jammer is you might inadvertently produce the signal that sets the bomb off. So I would tend to suggest more than likely is that Russia has a system similar to that in the U.S. where the police can shut off cell towers in an area around what they're doing so that people can't be sending out embarrassing pictures or texts about what's going on.
Yeah, I really think this was orchestrated because there's just too much happening against Russia. You know, it's following that pattern. You know, you got to follow the pattern, and it's just a convenient time where Putin was in St. Petersburg at that particular time, right? So
yeah, and
how would they know he's... Oh, go ahead.
No, I don't think Putin made any secret of the fact he was going to St. Petersburg. It's his hometown. It was probably, announced in the media that he was going to make that trip. Just the way that we hear in our media that the president is planning to head down to his southern White House in Florida, or he's heading out to meet with somebody here or there. And so there's usually some advance notice about where the president of either country is going to be going. So I don't think there's anything there. But as far as orchestrated from outside, yes, the Russian security services are looking for 2 more people, and apparently they're concerned that this is an organized terror group operating in Russia, centered on Moscow, and that they have other suicide bombers ready to go. And it may not even be a real suicide bomber. The way that you can set this up is you just find some patsy, and you just say, here, I need you to deliver this package over there, and when you get on back, I'll give you 50 rubles or whatever it's going to be. And I think Israel has certainly manufactured some suicide bombers that way. We know that before the London tube bombing, the 772 bombing, there were people going through the Muslim community of London hiring actors for the security drill that just happened to be taking place at the exact same time and location as the actual bombing was eventually carried out. So all they needed to do was say, we're going to pay you to play a Muslim terrorist, and you're going to get a backpack with a fake bomb. Don't worry about it. And you are just to go sit here and see if the security services can detect you and disarm the bomb. And then, of course, they find out way too late that the bomb was actually real.
It's just sad how you notice how, I don't know if you talked about this yet, how nobody lit anything up last night. I know that's symbolic, but that goes to show you this oligarchy, plutocracy, where they don't care about people. They don't. They only care their own power, and the media goes along with it. Either partial get paid off, and the other are like cultists. They're worshipers of the state. you know, the worshipers of this oligarchy, you know. But, you know, I think Israel lit up something, but that was it. No Paris Eiffel Tower, no, you know.
Yeah,
no,
where's the Je suis St. Petersburg? You know, again, it looks like it's, you know, and it follows the pattern of terrorist acts to destabilize society, make the population think the government can't take care of them as part of that destabilization leading to a regime change. And so that's where that seems to be going. Anyway, listen, Dustin, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to get back onto the news. We're going to close the phone lines for a while. And getting on back to the St. Petersburg bombing, no sympathy in the American press. And instead, what we're getting from the corporate media in the United States and in Europe is that Putin did this himself. He's bombing his own people. After all, Assad is gassing his own people, so Putin is bombing his own people. And apparently, Louise Mensch, who has a reputation as Russia Insider's secret internet girlfriend, and she's also a vice president at News Corp, came on out and said Putin would nail bomb his own mother. I mean, that's ridiculous. Then she follows up and says that Putin was behind the assassination of Vitaly Churkin. Boy, talk about conspiracy theories. Oh, my goodness here. Newsweek is actually out there saying that Putin is secretly behind every single terrorist attack in Russia. We're going to do a quick shout-out to our on-air affiliates just now rejoining the network. Now, Donald Trump called Vladimir Putin, expressed sympathy for the tragedy, and is offering his assistance in dealing with this terrorist group. And this is another indicator that what Donald Trump is trying to do and what the machinery of government around him are doing are two separate things. And as I said yesterday, it puts Trump in a bind. He can't very well stand up and say, these government agencies are refusing my orders, because the Democrats would say, see, he's an ineffective leader, therefore we need to invoke the 25th Amendment and get rid of him. Now, down in Syria, Damascus troops have captured another strategic town in Hama, and apparently it was a major defeat for al-Nusra. Now, remember, we're seeing this weird chain of events following Tillerson's announcement that the Syrian people, if Assad were to win the next election, that Donald Trump doesn't have a problem with Assad staying on as leader of Syria. Now, this is a major roadblock to the dollarification agenda for the Middle East. Remember, General Wesley Clark blew the whistle on this back in 2005 and said there's this list of countries that the U.S. is going to regime change in order to shackle their oil to the U.S. dollar. Syria was on the list. Iran's the last one on the list. And now, all of a sudden, Trump is saying the regime change agenda is now off. And we're actually in Syria to try and get the terrorists. Now, obviously, the old guard still wants to break Syria up. They want to create the new Kurdistan. They want to balkanize Syria. But, you know, Tillerson said, if Assad wins his election, the Trump administration does not have a problem with him remaining as president. And so it doesn't make sense that right after that Assad would gas his own people again. It just does not make any sense at all. There's no reason for him to do it, and hundreds of reasons for him not to. Now, Nikki Haley, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, is definitely reading from a different script, because she's up there saying, we have no love for Assad. We've made that very clear. He's been a hindrance to peace for a long time. I'm sorry, who's bombing Syria? Who was arming the terrorists? Who was smuggling weapons out of Libya to give to ISIS and al-Qaeda in Syria? I don't think Assad was the hindrance to peace. But she's out there just fully on the attack. And first of all, this is not the normal behavior you expect to see from an ambassador who is supposed to be diplomatic. And clearly, Nikki Haley, what she is saying, I don't think that's coming from Donald Trump. Not based on what Tillerson said. And more to the point, the rest of the world is now getting a clear message as to how badly fractured and factionalized the U.S. government is right now, to the point where it really can't function. If there was a nation out there seriously interested in attacking us, this would be a good time to do it. Over at Russia Today, they're reporting on U.S. plans to balkanize Syria under this Kurdish pretext. And that's basically what it is. Oh, we must have an independent Kurdistan. It's not really your business. And if you look at that part of the world, going back through history, the imperialist powers have a bad habit of constantly redrawing the borders to suit their own ends. Another article on the same general theme from Global Research up in Canada. The U.S. war strategy is to destroy, partition, occupy, and control. Break it up into little tiny pieces that are easy to bully around, and that's what they're trying to do to the countries in the Middle East. Now, as I said before, the Trump administration's saying that Assad can stay on if he wins his election does signal a reversal of the Obama-era policy in Syria, which was Assad must go, Assad must go, Assad must go. And everybody who's still pushing that agenda is clearly one of the Obama holdovers. And one of the biggest mistakes that Donald Trump made was attempting to be magnanimous in victory and keeping some of these people on. It was his most serious mistake. It may eventually prove to be fatal to his administration that he did that. He shouldn't have. He should have scraped it all out and brought in new people, as many from outside the political arena as possible, so they're not compromised with prior relationships or other linkages. They're not being blackmailed. They're not being bribed. He needs clean people in there, and that means people who are not politicians. He needs people in there who actually know how to get things done. So we're getting on back to this latest claim. They're bringing back the Syria Assad is gassing his own people. And now they're saying the hospital that was treating the victims has been bombed. And they're insisting it was an airstrike. Therefore, it had to be the Syrian government or the Russians who did this horrible, horrible thing. And BBC is out there carrying this as absolute incontrovertible fact, except for one problem. Witnesses on the ground are saying there's no indication that there was an aerial bombardment. There were no warplanes overhead. This was a chemical weapon bomb lobbed in on some kind of an improvised mortar, and that matches past cases where the Syrian rebels were using chemical weapons to frame on Bashar al-Assad. And of course, the corporate media and the BBC are going to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. Now, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights is run out of a one-bedroom home in Coventry, England. The guy who runs the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, it's a one-man operation. He hasn't been in Syria for 12 years. And his day job is he makes and sells T-shirts. And yet this guy is held up as the definitive authority for what's going on in Syria. He's basically a propaganda laundry. And there's a lot of them out there. Organizations that are set up that claim to be observatories or independent this or independent that, and they put out the propaganda so the corporate media can say, well, according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, Bashar al-Assad tap dances barefoot on his shag carpeting. Horror of horrors. So let's look back in history. Back in 2014, the U.S. was claiming Assad was using chemical weapons on his own people. A research team from MIT took a look at this, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and said this couldn't possibly be because the range of the improvised rocket was too short to have been launched from government-controlled areas. And folks, Syria doesn't need to make improvised rockets. Only the rebels do. Now, back in 2013, there was another claim. that Assad had gassed his own people. And the United Nations, when they went to investigate, all the witnesses said it was the Syrian rebels who did it. And the corporate media said, oh, Assad did it, Assad did it. Assad used sarin gas on his own Alawite supporters right in front of the UN chemical weapons inspectors on the very day that they arrived. Really? What was Assad's motive for doing something that stupid? I don't know. Because he's a weird guy? Maybe? To find out if you're being lied to, look for what should be there and isn't. And what wasn't there back in 2013 was a reason for Assad to carry out a chemical weapon attack on his own supporters. Just as today, there is no reason for Assad to carry out a chemical attack on civilians only days after getting a seal of approval for continuing as president of Syria from the Trump administration. This is obviously a false flag to try and roll that back. By the way, the Syrian government has announced that they have located one of the terrorist chemical weapons depots in Idlib and destroyed it. And as that caller mentioned, Syria surrendered all of their chemical weapons in that Russian brokered deal. And nobody has any proof that they still have any of them whatsoever. It's the rebels who have the weapons and the motive to use them. Now then, let's talk about what's going on in Yemen, because they're getting a little bit lost in all the noise, the Sturm und Drang here. A while back, the United States gave Saudi Arabia white phosphorus weapons. Now, these are banned under international law for any purpose other than generating smoke or illumination at night. When these weapons are used against humans, against the residential areas, they cause massive fire, massive burns. If that white phosphorus gets on you, it burns and continues to burn even as it digs into your body. It is a horrific weapon. Its use is considered a war crime, and you can't even put it out with water. It'll burn you right down to the bone. So the question is now, we know that Saudis are using banned chemical weapons in Yemen, including white phosphorus. Are they using the weapons the U.S. provided? And if they are, then isn't the U.S. guilty of the war crime under that same logic the gun grabbers have of when somebody commits a crime with a gun that you manufactured, you bear the guilt? Well, if the U.S. gave Saudi Arabia white phosphorus and Saudi Arabia used that white phosphorus on Yemen, on the people of Yemen, then both Saudi Arabia and the United States are guilty of war crimes. Now, as that earlier caller mentioned, yeah, there is a major ramp up of the booga booga. Get you scared, get you afraid. Lithuania has now come on out saying that Russia is just 24 hours away from war, that Putin could mobilize the army in just one day. Remember back when they were selling us that story about Saddam's nuclear weapons, and phony Tony Blair was up there saying that Saddam could attack London in just 45 minutes. You don't have time to think about this. Just be afraid. That's what they're doing. And again, look for what should be there and isn't. What isn't there is a reason for Russia to go to war over Europe. Europe is a mess. Its economy is on the edge of collapse. It's been flooded with all kinds of refugees who are just straining the system to the breaking point. Putin has enough problems taking care of Russia. He doesn't need the headache of Europe. He doesn't need the headache of the United States. He is not going to attack us. All of the military preparations Russia is making is because the United States and NATO have parked a huge invasion force along the border with Russia. And they're just looking for an excuse. We know who the aggressor is in this latest run-up to a world war. And I know you don't like the idea that we're the bad guys, but this time we are the bad guys. We'll be back after these words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, like I said, the booga booga is ramping up. The Russians are coming to get you. The North Koreans are coming to get you. And the corporate media is pounding this story that came out on NBC yesterday, where NBC claims to have an anonymous, high-level North Korean defector who says that Kim Jong-un is ready to attack the United States of America with nuclear weapons. So, more booga-booga. This is another version of Saddam has nukes. Saddam is getting ready to come get you, only this one is Kim Jong-un. Now, North Korea, or for that matter, any nuclear-armed nation, has nuclear weapons to deter invasion. That's what you have them. They're very expensive. And you build them so that anybody trying to invade your country and take it away from you will pay a very heavy price for it. You don't throw away that deterrent casually. Many nations have nuclear weapons, but do not use them. The sole exception being the United States of America. So why would North Korea throw away its best defense against a U.S. invasion while inviting a U.S. attack in the process? They're not going to do that. Are we being set up for a new false flag? Is the U.S. going to set off a big bomb someplace where it's harmless and claim North Korea missed their intended target? Think about all the wars started with lies. Saddam's nukes, Assad's sarin, torpedoes in the Gulf of Tonkin, Spanish mine in Havana Harbor, Lusitania not smuggling weapons to Britain, Pearl Harbor a surprise, 9/11, and so forth. This is just more of the same. And they're definitely ramping this stuff up here. Apparently the House has voted to label North Korea as a state sponsor of terror amid rising tensions of the nation's nuclear weapons program. They're just throwing around that label. State sponsor of terror. We don't like them. All right, declare them a state sponsor of terror. They haven't actually been caught committing an act of terror. It's just another way to demonize them so that Americans who are not paying attention to how the government lies are going to say, oh, they're a state sponsor of terror. Oh, they must be bad. Yes, they're bad people. Here, take my money. Take the life of my child. Save me from the evil North Koreans. We're going to go ahead and grab a phone call. Glenn in Philadelphia. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Russia may be able to attack in one day, but we can process your online mortgage application in less than 12 hours. Now's the opportunity. Seize the day. Become a homeowner before going out in a blaze of glory.
Yes, absolutely there. Yes, Russia could mobilize very quickly. They could carry out a very fast attack. So can the United States of America. I'm sure that Putin, like any world leader, has a tremendous ego. And he goes to sleep at night dreaming of future generations of Russian school children having to memorize his name and his birthday and see his face on the coinage, the currency, and the postage stamps. So he's not going to let Russia get destroyed without a really, really good reason, or risk Russia being destroyed without a really good reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And as to Warhawk McCain, I would love to research the Forrestal thing and find out exactly how many men died. They transferred him to another ship because they were afraid the crew was going to keelhaul him. Plus he was, Songbird McCain. I would love to go to a public McCain speaking event and hold up a sign that says, 4 or however 8 or however men on the Forrestal died because of Wet Start Johnny.
There's a lot of stuff online. They actually found and published some of the audio recordings he made for North Vietnam, saying that yes, America was the invader, and again, he should have been tried for treason at that point. But we have this protected establishment. Admiral McCain was good buddy with Israel. Admiral McCain was the one who was in charge of the cover-up of USS Liberty's attack, Israel's attack on the USS Liberty. He's the one who went on in there and made sure that the official story of an accident was the accepted history. All right, we've got to take a break for commercials. Thank you for the phone call. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And it is now official. The House Intelligence Committee has requested Susan Rice to testify. And the big question everybody is asking now is, will she plead the Fifth? Or will she seek an immunity deal? Or will she get very, very depressed and drop a barbell on her own throat? Or go for a long walk in Fort Marcy Park? You know how fragile these people can be when things aren't going well. All righty, we're going to take another phone call. Richard in Washington State. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, for starters, I want to commend you on your eloquence in command of the English language.
Well, thank you.
And the second is, I have two issues in regards to Pearl Harbor.
Yes.
I spent 4 years in the Navy, and what it is they break the duty section down in 3 or 4 sections. And on the weekends, there'll be like one section on duty.
Yes.
Okay. So this is in regards to there was some men here on the 50th anniversary of Pearl Harbor in Yakima, Washington, and this is on a local news broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
And these men said that the night before Pearl Harbor, the EM Club had an open bar. In other words, free drinks.
Mm-hmm.
And they were very adamant about it. There was about 5 or 6 of them, and they were in front of the camera. And they were very adamant about this point. And they said that they had an open bar that night, and they were set up. I mean, this was like in '91. So these people are probably either dead or close to it by now.
Yeah.
But they were very adamant about getting this point across, and I was very impressed by it. And now to get back to the duty section, what it is, they brought bombers in about the time that the Japanese attacked to confuse the radar operators. In the Navy, if you have any ships coming in or anything like that, it's usually done during the week when you have 3 or 4 sections on duty.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have that stuff coming in on a weekend when there's just one section duty.
That's interesting.
There's 2 places there. Yes, and I wanted to make that point because I wanted to get out. And it's significant. It was an inside job.
Oh, there's no question about it.
Definitely.
We had the daughter of Admiral Kimmel was a guest on our show a few years back, and she shared some insights about how Admiral Kimmel, in hindsight, realized he'd been set up and made a scapegoat. And, of course, both he and General Short were restored to rank, but posthumously. So these gentlemen went to their graves not knowing that their reputation would be revived later on. But, yeah, at this point, not only did Roosevelt know the attack was coming, he had spent all of 1941 goading the Japanese into it, following this 8-step plan created by Office of Naval Intelligence Lieutenant Commander Arthur H. McCollum. And having the opportunity to live here on Oahu, I've looked at the Pearl Harbor story, and I've been able to personally verify much of it as to what was going on. I mean, all of the new ships, the carriers and their high-speed escorts, were out of the harbor off to the southwest, and all that was sitting in Pearl Harbor were these older ships that were basically on the edge of being junk. In fact, the USS Utah, which was the Arizona's sister ship, had already been taken off combat status and was being used as an artillery training ship. And so they basically left behind stuff that they could afford to lose.
Yeah, and they had a lot of fast cruisers they sent out, too.
Yes.
Out of range of the Japanese.
That's right. I think I'm going to share one more thing with you, and then I need to get back to the news here. I think one of the most interesting aspects of it is that Admiral Kimmel was running a training exercise to the northwest of Hawaii, right in the path of the oncoming Japanese fleet. It was called Task Force 29, I think. And Roosevelt literally got on the phone to Admiral Kimmel and said, "You bring those ships back to port right now." This was on Saturday. He said, "You bring them back right now, no explanation." And Kimmel did what he was told to do. And if that training exercise had continued where it was, they would have discovered the Japanese fleet before they were in position to launch the air attack. So, yeah, there's all kinds of giveaways there. We've confirmed that radio intercept stations here in Hawaii and even on the SS Lurline, which was the Matson's passenger ship, were intercepting the Japanese fleet's radio transmissions. They were not maintaining radio silence, as we're always told. Anyway, listen, Richard, thank you for sharing that with me. I think I met one of those gentlemen from Yakima before that big get-together. He was actually here in Hawaii, and we just ran into him down at Pearl Harbor, and he was sharing some stuff with us. I forget his name, but I remember he said, we're going to this big 50th anniversary thing in Yakima, Washington. Okay? All right, well, thank you very much. We're going to let you go here. Get on back to the news. All righty. So, getting on back to North Korea, Tillerson is going to chair a UN meeting on the North Korean nuclear program. And basically, we have Nikki Haley is still out there saying that we need to go on in and make sure North Korea doesn't have nuclear weapons. We need to push it forward. And she's out there agitating for war. And it's a question of, you know, whose side is she on? And that's bolstered by this story that came out of 12160.info, where Nikki Haley is still out there saying Russia was certainly involved in the 2016 elections, even as Adam Schiff says there's no evidence to back it up, even as Fox News is admitting there's no evidence to back it up. And she's still out there pushing the war hawk propaganda. Trump needs to clean house, and he needs to do it right now. Getting on back to your daily dose, or in this case it's an overdose of Booga Booga, a pro-ISIS group draws up kill list of U.S. targets and threatens Donald Trump. And they're just pouring this stuff on out there. And ISIS came out with another video that was discovered by the usual suspects. And what's going on here is the Democrats, Obama, Susan Rice, Hillary Clinton, are desperate to bury the Obamagate story. And they are clearly trying to flood the news with all kinds of distractions, the ISIS kill list, Syrian gas attack, Russia terrorist bombing. Next, they're going to claim they finally captured a UFO or something silly like that. But they are feeling desperate and cornered, and that is what makes them dangerous. Apparently, Israeli forces have opened fire at civilian homes in Khan Yunis, eastern part of the city, south of the Gaza Strip, and apparently just opened fire and caused extensive damage to a number of houses. Now, they didn't actually hit any people, amazingly enough, but apparently this is just part of Israel's continuing collective punishment of the Palestinians for daring to be Palestinians. All right, let's talk about the economic news, because that is not good at all. Story coming out of Zero Hedge. 2017 retail bankruptcies soar to Great Recession highs. Why don't we skip the euphemism and say Great Recession or Greatest Recession or Great Recession and say what it really is? We're in a depression. We have been for a while. The only reason most people don't know it is because the government and the corporate media are lying to us about various economic indicators. They're still claiming we have a 5% unemployment rate when we have more than 90 million Americans willing and able to work who cannot find a job. We're seeing iconic stores going out of business. Sears is probably not going to be here to the end of the year. Ralph Lauren just closed its flagship store on Fifth Avenue in order to cut costs. Now, over in Europe, to add to their woes, the euro is being seen as less and less stable. And because of the instability of the euro, because they're trying to cover their debt crisis the same way the Federal Reserve is. They're just cranking them up out of thin air. So apparently a survey of reserve managers at 80 central banks, according to the Financial Times, they're switching from the euro to the pound sterling as their primary reserve currency. And that is a significant development. Now, Israel has started exporting Palestinian gas to the European Union. Israel has signed a $4 billion agreement to sell gas extracted from the Palestinian seashore to the European Union. They're doing the same thing to Palestine that they're doing to Syria and the Golan Heights. They're stealing oil and gas that does not belong to them and selling it. But if you talk about it, then you're a dirty, filthy anti-Semite who wants Hitler to come back and gas the Jewish babies in the ovens. Now, Iceland's bankers are filing an appeal to the European Court of Human Rights. Even though Iceland is not part of the European Union, but they're trying to go to that court and claim that they were simply scapegoated in the aftermath of the 2008 mortgage-backed security fraud. Now, they have been arrested, tried, convicted of economic fraud, and they want to get on out because you're not supposed to jail bankers. It's against the rules that we just made up. Bankers can do whatever they want and not be arrested. Over in Dallas, as you know, they've got a major problem with their police pension program. Like so many other pensions, it was defunded during the collapse of the mortgage-backed security fraud in 2008. And Dallas Mayor Mike Rawlings had originally supported a plan for a massive taxpayer bailout of the police pension. Now he's changed his mind and pulled it back because apparently he's not trusting the numbers he's seeing. And he's basically talking about taxpayers guaranteeing and funding the pensions of phantom employees. So he's pulled his support on that one. Now, Donald Trump is taking aim at the H-1B visa program, which supposedly allows American companies to hire highly skilled, highly trained workers from other countries and bring them here. Now, from the corporation's point of view, this is advantageous because workers coming from foreign countries don't demand the same high salaries that similarly skilled Americans do, and they have abused the program and brought these skilled workers to the United States to take the jobs away from American workers. We've seen these stories time and time again. Even Disneyland got hit with this one, where their IT workers are told they have to train their H-1B replacements, and then they're out of a job. And Trump is now taking aim at that and saying we have to prioritize American workers who have the qualifications to get the jobs first, and only when those skilled workers are exhausted should we allow H-1B visas. So he's keeping that campaign promise as well. Now, over at the EU, on top of central banks deciding that the euro is no longer dependable, the European Commission is looking at a huge budget crisis. Juncker is looking at over £200 billion deficit. And that's one of the reasons why they don't want Britain to go, because, frankly, for the last several years, it is only Britain and Germany who have the economy to keep the whole system propped up. And Britain is now leaving. They've begun the process of the Brexit. And now we're starting to hear talk in Germany. They want out. They're tired of working to prop up these other failed economies, especially when they realize the reason these economies are failing are the predations of that European Central Bank. So they're looking at an economic crisis over there. All right, we're going to go ahead and grab two phone calls real quick. Herman in Georgia, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi. How you doing?
Doing all right.
All right. I'm the one that emailed you on January 27th about Alex Jones, where he often gets too emotional, out of control, and erupts his guests so often.
Mm-hmm.
Today I was listening to him, and it was, I forget about the person. It was in the White House staff somewhere he was talking about. But anyway, he actually started swearing. He says he's taking the gloves off, and that kind of talk shouldn't be on radio or cable.
He's going to get his broadcasters in serious trouble, because we have to watch that. Listen, I don't want to turn this show into a let's gang up on Alex Jones. I'm not. All right, because, Alex and I disagree on certain things. Actually, the only thing we really disagree on is Israel. But I do carry a lot of his material on my website here. And, the reality is that 10 years ago, Alex Jones got me my start in talk radio. So, you know, I'm always going to have very warm, fuzzy feelings about him for that. But I don't want to, like, you know, pound on him in his show. It's his show, and he can do what he wants, okay?
Yes, right. But I would hope that we don't lose his avenue, because that's an avenue for other people to get news. And I think he should, if you could talk to him or something, to warn him that he's not presenting his news in a professional manner.
Alex doesn't respond to my emails anymore, and you know, I tried to warn him off Pizzagate and some other things that looked like false flags and everything. So I think you ought to direct your inquiry to Alex Jones or to his staff over at InfoWars and Prison Planet. Thank you for the call, Herman. We're going to switch over to Grayson in North Carolina. Aloha, Grayson. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Hey, Michael, how's it going?
It's going fine.
This is my first time hearing about your radio show, and I just wanted to call in because the supposed chemical bombings in Syria by Assad, the only thing that was not clear for me is that it would make no sense for him to do it. So I was wondering, like, what your thoughts might be on that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And we have had, like, 3 previous cases where they tried to claim Assad was gassing his own people, and all 3 were discredited by MIT, by the United Nations, by witnesses on the ground.
Wasn't the other one in 2013 around August?
Yeah, that one was the one that the MIT people said, no, it couldn't have happened that way. And then there was another one in 2014 where the UN inspectors said, no, it was the rebels who were doing it. So we've been down this road before, and it doesn't make sense. Just days after Assad gets the Trump administration seal of approval to continue as Syria's president, and this chemical weapon attack happens, it's a desperate attempt to roll back that policy. And that's the only thing that does make sense about this.
That's what I was thinking, because pro-Assad, the media manager for him, they had claimed that it was an attack on a rebel military depot.
Okay, we got to let you go. I'm sorry, we got to let you go and take a break for commercials. Thank you very much. We'll be back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And I got to tell you, out in California, they are going bonkers out there. We ran a story on what really happened today. Apparently, a guy bought some pizza for his date and decided he was going to eat a slice at the bus stop, and he actually got a ticket for that. That's how weird it's getting out there in California. It's like living in a giant bowl of granola. What ain't fruits and nuts is going to be flakes. Now, the California Senate has passed the Sanctuary State Bill. This Bill 54, introduced by Senate President Pro Tem Kevin DeLeon, was voted through 27-12 on a straight party line vote. Obviously, the Democrats for it, the GOP against it. It's now heading to the Assembly. It's probably going to pass there. And DeLeon came on out and said the purpose of this bill is to make our communities safer. Really? Ask Sweden how that worked out. Anyway. Another story that's coming on out from the newamerican.com is talking about this Missouri woman who was involved in this resettling of migrants. And she's blowing the whistle on the United Nations and federal schemes and Soros NGOs. And she says they're just flying in huge numbers of unvetted refugees from Africa and the Middle East, many of whom are carrying diseases. And they get off the plane, they're handed passports, social security numbers, and a vast array of tax-funded benefits. This is that New World Order global plan to blur all of the various regions, populations together into one mass. It's a campaign to destroy all sense of a regional, historic, or ethnic identity. Because people who have a strong sense of who they are, where they come from, they're much harder to control. And we've been seeing attacks. First it was on the Confederate flag, and now we have a situation where high school students who are wearing red, white, and blue are being denounced as racist. Now the good news is Last month, March, 2,070 refugees arrived in the United States of America. That was a 54% drop from February. The numbers are going down, both for the refugees and also the illegal immigrants. That's really fallen off, because the illegal immigrants are now starting to understand they're not going to get the free stuff they were promised. They're not going to be protected, except in these sanctuary cities and sanctuary state, all of whom are in violation of Title VIII. Every member of that California Senate who voted for that bill ought to be locked up. Now, as you know, over in the EU, they're having a huge problem with the refugee crisis there. Poland and Hungary have already started closing their borders off and saying, we can't take any more. And the European Union has issued an ultimatum to Poland and Hungary: accept more migrants or leave. That could backfire on Brussels. We'll be right back after station identification. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Now, we have been talking through the years about the abuses of the civil forfeiture system. And people are starting to push back on it. We've had these revelations of vast sums of money taken from the American people who have never even been charged with a crime. We basically live in a country whose government pillages the civil population. It is no different than Sir Guy of Gisborne's thugs riding across Nottingham, just taking chickens and pigs and farmers' daughters whenever they feel like it. That's exactly where we are right now. There's no more due process. We have had horrible tragedies arising from police departments actually looking for civil forfeiture opportunities to bolster their budgets. Well, the Arizona Senate has just passed a bill reforming the state's asset forfeiture laws and basically taking on the federal forfeiture programs by banning prosecutors from circumventing state laws by passing cases off to the feds. See, in the states that are trying to push back on civil forfeiture, what they'll do is they'll say, well, we're going to put this in the federal jurisdiction. It's a cash grab. That's all it is. It's a cash grab. The government is dead broke, hopelessly in debt. So they're looting the people now. That's what they're doing. Let's talk a little bit about political correctness. And I think it has reached a point of being so silly, people are going to say, this really is nonsense. We were talking the other day about this gym in a school that removed the scale, the weight scale, because they didn't want the overweight students to feel bad. They were going to take it away. Well, a high school, this is being reported over in 12160, a high school has basically done away with all of the mirrors in the girls' bathroom and replaced them with posters of affirmation. Because apparently seeing your own reflection is a triggering event if you are not supermodel beautiful. Now, one area where political correctness is already stumbling very badly is in the world of comic books. And Marvel Comics and Stan Lee tried to be politically correct. They tried to bring out a whole new bunch of diverse superheroes, female version of Iron Man, female version of Spider-Man, gay heroes, all the rest of it. And what they're hearing back from the retailers of comic books is people who buy comic books don't want to buy these. They want to stick with the old favorites. You know, Iron Man, the rest of the Marvel traditional stable, as it were. And Marvel is apparently losing money trying to put out these other politically correct superheroes because people aren't buying them. Now, of course, Marvel and Stan Lee are doing very well off the movie franchise. And apparently they're going to be filming part of their new one down here on the island of Maui, which is going to be fun. Good for our local film economy. They need the boost here. But I mean, ultimately, you need to realize that people are going to decide for themselves. You cannot indoctrinate political correctness into people. They're going to dig their feet in. They may make the polite noises, oh, yes, I support political correctness and all the rest of it. And then when they're off on their own, they're going to go back to doing what they think is right, what they believe is right. A lot of people see this as pandering to a bunch of crybabies whom, no matter what you do, there's always going to be something else they're upset about. Because they're professional crybabies. We have way too many people in our society whose entire sense of self-valuation lies in always finding something to be offended about. And there's no making these people happy, so why bother trying in the first place? I had somebody come up to me the other day and say, do you realize you just committed a microaggression? And I said, I micro-apologize. For some reason, it didn't make them happy. It's not going to bother anymore. All right, let's talk about human-caused global warming. Apparently, more snow is heading into Maine. And apparently, the people of Maine who are normally used to winter, they're kind of getting a little fed up. It's over. Come on, enough already. West Michigan is getting snow over the next couple of days. Down in Atlanta, Georgia, they are holding a fundraiser because apparently this last winter put so much snow on the city, it's actually strained and stressed some of the town's iconic buildings, such as the Atlanta Club and the Hub, and they're now doing a fundraiser to try and reinforce and stabilize these buildings. We're going to do a shout-out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Apparently over in Kurdistan it may be spring, but it's still snowing in their mountains, and apparently it's actually provided a little bit of a boost to their tourism. Yes, the people of Kurdistan will actually ski and play in the snow. It's amazing. All right, let's talk about the world of computers, and again, I got to tell you, I am having such a gas with this Raspberry Pi. It really is a lot of fun. Nice little compiling environment here. Before we do that, though, we're going to take a phone call. Mario in the Netherlands, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. Aloha. I've heard your remarks regarding the troubles of the euro.
Yes.
I'm listening to the alternative media for quite some time, and I never hear a real taxation or a real evaluation about the status of the euro. The euro is not at all what it seems to be. The euro is a dollar surrogate.
Yes.
The Treaty of Maastricht forbids the European Central Bank to create fiat money. So Mario Draghi, or his predecessor, Jean-Claude Trichet, never created 1 euro. All the new euros are based on borrowed dollars from the Fed. This is the whole trick, and the Europeans don't know this. This news must be made worldwide.
I had not been aware of that. I was not aware of that. Well, no wonder the Federal Reserve is so intent on keeping the European Union together. It's just another market for their scam.
Right. Listen, I've done my research. In November 2011, 29th of November, all the major countries of the West met in Washington, the premiers, the heads of states, and the chiefs of the central banks. And they agreed the lender of last resort of the world is only one, and this is the Fed. Exception, the Bank of England, which is lender of last resort for England only.
Where does the Bank of International Settlements come into this?
Well, they are coordinating the leadership of the Fed. This is all. They do not create anything. They are just clearing some money flows, and they are coordinating. They enforce the status quo. IMF is kind of a police function, because no country in the world can do business with the IMF if they say we create our own money. No, this is forbidden. The Bank of Russia cannot create 1 ruble. Only if they have a reserve in gold, which means dollars, or a reserve in dollars, or a reserve in euros, which are also dollars. This is the whole trick. And people do not understand this dependency on the greatest scheme on the earth, and this is the Federal Reserve.
I would love to see. I would love to see supporting information on this because
sure.
that does.
Send me one thing email, and I will reply.
Well, can you leave your email address off the air with our control room technician? I don't want to broadcast it because you'll be subject to harassment.
No, I don't mind. This is Mario, M-A-R-I-O, 828282 at yahoo.com.
All righty.
So the sequence 82 is 3 times.
Okay, and that's H as in hotel?
82.
Oh, the number 8.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
3 times.
All right.
Mario 828282 at yahoo.com.
All right.
I'll send you all the supporting information.
All right, I would appreciate that. I'm just now sending the test mail. It just says test in the subject line. And thank you very much for that. Okay?
My pleasure. My pleasure.
All right, have a good day. We're going to let you go. Going to let you go and get on back to the news here. All right, we're talking about computers. Now, as you know, we're coming up on the supposed deadline for a ransom demand made by this group of hackers in London against Apple. And the story is kind of dropped offline, which means maybe Apple just went ahead and paid the ransom. It wasn't really all that much. Certainly, though, if you are on an Apple device, you need to understand something important. Even if you're not using the iCloud, your device is at risk because the iCloud password and your device password are exactly the same. So they could have your password even though you're not using the iCloud. Obviously, the thing to do is sometime before the 6th, let's give it an extra day for padding, before the 6th, change all the passwords on all your Apple devices and you should be okay. Now, the good news is they have arrested a suspect over in London. A 20-year-old man was arrested in London in connection with this hacker group, and hopefully he's going to roll on over and allow them to sweep this group up here. Because I got to tell you, the cybercrime is just completely out of control. Now, if you are a gamer and you have the Nintendo Switch, there's apparently a problem with it being left in docked mode for too long. And this is another example of a product that was designed and put out on the market without really testing it. And apparently they've had all kinds of problems with dead pixels on the screen happening very quickly within the warranty period. But apparently there are pictures being posted on Twitter and Reddit that are showing the consoles actually bending and warping. Apparently when they're left in the docked mode for 40 or 50 hours, they get really, really hot. And they're starting to warp. And I don't know who designed these things, but they possibly need a refresher course in things like cooling. But it's a problem. Now, Google uses a lot of computer algorithms to try and classify things and categorize them. And one of the systems they have is a video recognition robot that is intended to spot extremist videos online. And it's already been shown to be faulty because researchers took a video about animals and they inserted a single frame of a car once every 2 seconds. And that was enough for Google's video recognition system to wrongly classify the video as being about cars. Remember the other day I was saying that I'm not that concerned about massive NSA spying on us all outside the constitutional problem, because it's a massive amount of data and they simply can't process it all. And I think this illustrates exactly the problem they're dealing with. You have to have humans looking at the stuff to really make sense of what it means. If you're using automated filters, they can be fooled by spelling mistakes. When I go out and I do a Google search on myself, this one picture keeps coming up and insists that's Michael Rivero, but it isn't. Somebody else completely. And that means this entire NSA spy system is unreliable. Now, this is a weird story. Over in Switzerland, there is a man who is on trial for defamation. And all he did, is a 45-year-old defendant in Zurich. He liked 8 Facebook posts. And the prosecution has charged him with racism and anti-Semitism simply for liking Facebook posts. I think that is just incredibly absurd. But we seem to be living in an age of absurd government behavior, extreme political correctness. I mean, it really does get ridiculous. Now then, over in Denmark, probably you're already hearing here in the United States of America, people are very unhappy with decisions by the FCC and certain mergers and the fact that even though the United States used to be at the forefront of the computer and internet revolution, that we have fallen behind the rest of the world. Now, it turns out that Denmark has the best internet in the world. It is fast, it is reliable, and even Bernie Sanders said this should be the model for the United States to copy. And what's their secret? How was Denmark able to become an international leader in ICT delivery? And it turns out it's because they don't overregulate it. There's no supercharged, top-down, net neutrality rules or major government subsidies or any of that. They deregulated. They basically got rid of their equivalent of the Federal Communications Commission, and now Danes enjoy some of the best ICT service on the planet. It's another reminder that government doesn't always make things better. Its goal is to make them into a revenue stream for the government. Somebody was writing into me and talking about how now the government is talking about marijuana as a medicine. Saying, what are they going to do? Sell it back to us by prescription? And they're already doing that in some states. No, government makes money very simply. They take away something you already have and then sell it back to you. They take away marijuana, now they're selling it back to you. In the states that have decriminalized marijuana or legalized recreational marijuana, you're still not allowed to grow it yourself. You've got to buy it from that state store. And they're making money hand over fist. Ban homemade distilled spirits so that you will have to buy it from a bottle shop with the government getting taxes. That's what encroaching tyranny is. They take away more and more of what you already had and then offer to sell it back to you. I can think of hundreds of examples. Now, NASA is reshaping itself. As you know, Donald Trump has defunded that part of NASA that was rubber stamping the global warming hoax and retasked what remains to go on out there, back out into the solar system, and I'm fully on board with that because of the technology incubator aspect of it. That our next economic tech boom is going to come out of going back out to space. So NASA's already out there talking about their long-term plans. They want to establish a spaceport orbiting the moon. I'm not entirely sure what the rationale for putting it around the moon is, other than the moon is not anywhere near as crowded in orbital space as Earth, and that may be all the justification that's really needed. We've heard several times where they're having to nudge the International Space Station every once in a while to keep it from ramming into something else up there. And I'm rather sorry the Japanese system for collecting and deorbiting space junk didn't work out on its first test because, yeah, there's a lot of stuff up there, and it does need a good orbit cleaning. And I actually had an idea for a system, which Al Gore would absolutely hate. And when we come back from this next commercial break, I'm going to mention it again. I think it's worth consideration. I think it's worth consideration because it is a mess up there. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsor. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to go ahead and grab a quick phone call here. Rick in Arizona, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, what you said a little while ago is on my mind about data. I mean, look, there's so much data out there. It's like how many drops of water are in the ocean. And there's no logarithm that you're going to be able to do to try to find whatever you're looking for on the Internet. It's just too much data. Just as there's too many people, there's not enough cops, there's not enough military to create martial law. They are outnumbered, and all they can do is scare you into good behavior. And that's what most of all this on the Internet is trying to scare people into good behavior.
It's not working very well. Not working very well. It's like when we found out that NSA and CIA, and for that matter, even the IRS, are scanning social media like Facebook, looking for illicit behavior or somebody who's living a lifestyle that's not explained by their salary and everything. And social media is not a reliable source of raw intelligence. Everybody lies on social media, especially if they're trying to get a hot date for the weekend. Oh, yes, I live in a big house, and I just bought a new car, and I'm this, and it's ridiculous that they're even bothering.
And one more comment about web browsing history. They try to compare Google and Facebook to your ISP, but remember, you pay your ISP a monthly service fee. And Google and Facebook are out there, are in business of getting your information, but you're not paying Google every month for your Internet connection. So when Trump, and I think what Trump did is he basically took the Internet to where money talks and bullcrap walks. I think you're going to see that what they said a while back, where you're going to be speeded up if you got money, and if you don't got money and they don't like you, they're going to slow you down. So Trump's not my friend.
I definitely disagree with Donald Trump on this one, mostly because obviously in the course of my work, I go out and I visit a lot of web pages on a lot of different subjects that I'm not personally interested in, and so I don't need to be flooded with advertisements for, all kinds of bizarre stuff I have no intention of actually getting. In the end, I don't think it's going to produce the return of revenue that the advertisers think it's going to do. It's like that congressman who got up and said, I just ordered underwear online. I'm going to get flooded with ads for underwear. I'm not going to buy them because I already just did. And there are a lot of areas in which the online advertising community, they haven't really thought things through. They're too aggressive. They're not sensitive to the issue of annoying and offending readers, and then they wonder why people are putting up all the ad blockers and everything. Anyway, Rick, we're going to let you go. I want to get back to the science news here. So we were talking about the fact that near-Earth orbit has become a bit of a junkyard. Now, under international treaty, all the newer large satellites are required to have a deorbiting motor where they can bring themselves down into the atmosphere and burn on up. We had one come down over Hawaii a couple of months ago. It was quite spectacular. But there's a lot of stuff up there where they don't have the deorbit motors and they're just junk, or they had the deorbit motors and they simply did not work. And it is getting very crowded up there, and it is something that ought to be dealt with. So I had an idea, and in part it's based on SpaceX's success in developing a reusable rocket. So what my idea was is you have NORAD is already tracking all the space junk. They know where it is. That's how they know when they need to nudge the ISS away from something. And they know what is dead junk. So all you need is a launch point near the equator, and I offer Hawaii as a possibility. And you have a very small rocket that is taken up to high altitude on a balloon, and then it simply launches straight up, doesn't go into orbit, straight up, and the top of its trajectory is right in the oncoming path of the space junk you want to deorbit. And the rocket simply puffs out a bubble of like carbon dioxide gas created from chemicals on board. Just a big cloud, maybe a quarter mile across is all it's going to take. The orbiting object slams into that and is slowed down just enough to begin that long, slow glide down into Earth's atmosphere. And based on SpaceX's reusable rocket, the rocket comes on down, lands, and you can use it over and over and over again. But at some point, somebody's going to have to do something about it. That may, in fact, be the reason why NASA's talking about a spaceport orbiting the moon, because that is still pretty much open skies. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And I'm looking at the mailbox, and I just got an email from a listener who points out that in Colorado, if you have a license for medical marijuana, you are allowed to grow your own plants, but there is an upper limit on that. So, but again, you have to have the license. You can also sign on as a patient at a medical marijuana distributor, and you can assign your plants to them. They will cultivate and then sell the marijuana back to you cheap. So there is a mechanism if you have that medical permit that you have your own plants. But for the recreational users, you have to buy from the state. The state will get its money one way or the other, either the weed or the license. I can't imagine they're handing those things out for free. Now, I was watching on Fox News here, and they're talking about the sanctuary city issue and the threat of funds being cut to these sanctuary cities and potentially a sanctuary state in California. And the defenders of the sanctuary policy are now out with a new argument saying it isn't that they don't want to cooperate with federal immigration laws. It's just they don't have the facilities to arrest and hold all of the criminal, illegal immigrants that have moved into their cities. And I'm not sure that that's something that they were very smart to put on out there because they're revealing the scale of the problem. They're literally saying there aren't enough jails for them to hang on to these people until ICE can come down and grab them. They're basically checking them in. Okay, committed a robbery. All right, you're in jail. Well, we're running out of room, so you're out of jail. By golly, if you're caught with a marijuana plant, you are going away for a long, long time. Seems somewhat skewed. Apparently, governors in 4 states that have legalized marijuana in some form are approaching the Trump administration about, backing off on this marijuana enforcement. And we know where this attempt to stop the legalization or decriminalization is coming from. It's coming from big alcohol and big tobacco. And again, the idea that you're not allowed to grow your own intoxicants on your own land, you have to buy it from some corporation and pay taxes on it. I remember when I was a kid, it was actually legal to have an alcohol still. You've probably seen the TV show Moonshiners. And my grandfather, the one who used to get drunk with Richard Nixon, had a little tiny personal still out behind his hunting cabin up in the White Mountains. And he showed it to me when I was a kid. And it was for personal use only, because back then it was legal. It was only illegal if you sold or traded or gave the alcohol to somebody else without the tax stamp. And, of course, now they've simply said, anybody with a still, you're automatically a criminal. If you want whiskey, go to the store and buy it. And, again, this idea of the government making money off of things you make for yourself goes back a long, long way. It's actually provoked some armed rebellions in U.S. history. Okay, so getting on back here, we're talking about medical care, the high cost of medical care, and it is rather amazing that we have the most expensive medical care on earth by a huge, huge margin. No other country comes even close to how expensive medical care is in the United States of America. And a big part of it is people just seeing it as another money-making situation. So the drug maker Mylan has been hit with a class action lawsuit by retailers of or purchasers of the EpiPen, saying that the company engaged in illegal price fixing to inflate the price of its allergy treatment over a decade by 574%. They didn't put any more product in the pens, they just ran the price up. figuring people are dependent on that product because if they don't have it and they get an allergy reaction, probably from some of the vaccine adjuvants they've been exposed to, like peanut oil, they could die. So they're being hit with a class action lawsuit. Now, another drug company, Sanofi Pasteur, was caught overcharging the Department of Veterans Affairs $20 million. They were massively overcharging on drug prices. And they basically are being forced to pay that money back. Nobody's going to go to jail. But it's not about health care anymore. In fact, they need you to be chronically ill. They need you to be sick to make money. If the American people were perfectly healthy, the entire medical industrial complex would collapse. Now, not too long ago, there were concerns raised over BPA, bisphenol A, used in the plastics industry. It turned out to be an endocrine disruptor. And so they took it off the market and they said, we've come up with a new one, bisphenol S. And this one is new and improved. And it turns out it actually accelerates the aggressiveness of breast cancer because it too is an endocrine disrupting chemical. They just put the stuff out there. It's found in polycarbonate hard plastics. It's actually used in the currency. Thermal paper for printers, for store receipts, have this chemical. And it's leading to an increase in breast cancer aggressiveness. Now, there's some good news, because it turns out capsaicin, which is the part in chilies and peppers that produce the hot sensation, it's been shown to inhibit the growth of breast cancer cells. So there may be the possibility of a cure or at least a treatment. Nobody wants a cure. They want ongoing treatments. But there's something there. Amazing here. Maryland has now become the third state to ban fracking. Vermont was the first state back in 2012. And that was more of a statement because there wasn't a lot of fracking going on in Vermont anyway. New York in 2014 became the second state to ban fracking. And basically that was after 200 communities in the state had instituted local bans on fracking because all the problems it leads to. So now it looks like Maryland is going to join the rush on that one. Now, fracking is another example of a technology that is put out there with a reckless disregard for the public health and safety. It has led to a massive increase in earthquakes in places like Oklahoma, which prior to fracking did not have a history of seismic activity. The quake that damaged the Washington Monument was thought to have been caused by a fracking well. And it's not like they're fracturing that rock down below with water. It is a highly toxic mix of solvents to dissolve the rock and also industrial waste that can't be gotten rid of anywhere else. The idea is, oh, we're going to pump it 1,000 feet down. It'll stay there. It'll never be a problem ever again. Well, when you're fracturing the rock to extract the oil and gas, then obviously the toxic fracking fluid can follow that same path out of the rock. And it gets into the water. The natural gas that's leaking out of the fissures and the pipes gets into lakes, ponds, streams, and it destroys the oxygen dissolved in the water, killing off the fish. We've seen all these stories about there's a photo of a pond, and it's just covered with dead fish. And all they'll say is, well, the water was depleted of oxygen. And that's all they'll say. They won't tell you what it is depleted the oxygen. But when you're bubbling methane through water, methane will decompose when it encounters that oxygen. And it becomes carbon dioxide and more water. And the carbon dioxide bubbles up into the atmosphere, annoying Al Gore. And obviously water is water is water, and that's it. But that's what's causing it. There have been cases of people who have bought or built expensive homes near fracking wells, and all of a sudden they find there's natural gas coming out of their drinking water. to the point where they can actually light it on fire with a lighter. And the real tragedy of it all is that fracking has failed to produce the volume of gas and oil that the frackers said they were going to get. They've already had to pull back estimates by more than a half. It's never penciled out. And with that ill-considered oil price war against Russia, some fracking companies were driven right into bankruptcy. So, good for the people of Vermont, New York, and Maryland. And there's been another victory. Now, unfortunately, this is not Standing Rock, but there's a lawsuit that was just settled where the judge ordered the removal of a gas pipeline from Native American lands. And apparently the issue was one that the oil company couldn't get around. Their easement to use that land for the pipeline expired 17 years ago. They kept the pipeline going, kept using it, and none of the people whose land the pipeline crossed got any compensation from the pipeline company's use of their land since the year 2000. And the judge has given the oil pipeline company 6 months to remove that pipeline. Now, we've been talking a lot about the problem with fresh water, meaning that there really isn't enough of it. There are various ways, of course, to create fresh water out of salt water: solar stills, reverse osmosis, plain outright steam distilling. But there's been a new development, and it has to do with what are called graphene oxide membranes. They're using these graphene lattices, carbon lattices, to create filters that have holes that are so fine that water molecules will flow through, but not the salt molecules. And if this can be put into mass production, right now it's just research testing at the University of Manchester, and it was published in the journal Nature Nanotechnology. And they're basically saying if these can be manufactured in bulk, in mass, it's going to make cheap, large-scale desalinization possible, and we will free the world of wars fought for sources of fresh water, like Israel keeps trying to go back into Lebanon to get that Litani River. So this is a major, major development. Very, very positive one here. Now, another area, as long as we're talking about salt water, is ocean life. Because we have seen these horrible insults, if you will, to the ecology of the ocean. There was the Deepwater Horizon disaster that toxified the Gulf of Mexico. There is the ongoing problems with Fukushima, ongoing problems with the U.S. Navy's testing of ultra-powerful sonar that seems to be harming ocean life. And the hard reality is that we cannot have life on the surface of the earth if the oceans are dead. We are inextricably dependent on ocean life, seafood life, and not just for the occasional sushi. And the oceans are becoming depleted. There are now large dead zones. And I remember seeing the oceans when I was very young, and seeing them today and noticing there is a difference. I think the last time I saw a healthy ocean and healthy reefs was when Claire and I were down in Fiji, and we went sailing on a tall ship out to some of the outer islands, and we went snorkeling, and it was just amazing. And then there'd been a visit down to Barbados, which has been overdeveloped. Their reefs are all just gray, dead lumps, a couple of fish, that's it. I had an underwater camera, and I was like saying, come on, there's got to be a fish somewhere. Somewhere here. If you ever have a chance, go back and look at the Walt Disney version of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Because the underwater scenes for that were filmed out at Catalina Island, Southern California. And I've been to Catalina many times. Used to sail over to it from San Pedro. Been snorkeling there many times. And to look at the ocean life around Catalina today, it is nowhere near as abundant as was captured by the Disney motion picture cameras in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. There is a problem. So in the past year and a half, scientists have recorded a collapse of several dozen food chains within the Pacific Ocean. Authoritative figures in Vancouver are estimating the number may be closer to hundreds of thousands. They're seeing the Pacific salmon are dying. They're trying to force that GMO salmon into the marketplaces, and it turns out it actually lacks some of the nutrients that make eating seafood a benefit. There's a major problem out there, and it's all mismanagement. I remember when Fukushima happened, and there was a TV show called Deadliest Catch about the crab fishing people. And they did their end of the season wrap-up right here on the island of Oahu, and one of the members of their crew was a fan and invited me down. And when they were off camera, they were all saying their biggest fear was some college student going on down to the shore in Alaska, grabbing a crab and putting a radiation meter up against it and putting the video on YouTube. Because remember when Fukushima happened and everybody was concerned, oh, the USDA and the governor of Alaska were out there saying, we don't need to check. We don't even need to test. We're absolutely sure that there'll be no problem. We don't need to test because you don't need to know. Remember when Alan Coulter was saying a little radiation was actually good for you? That's how ridiculous that all got. Alrighty, we're coming up here on our last commercial break and the last segment of our program. I'm going to go scouring for some updated stories. I want to see what's going on with Susan Rice. And we're going to do a quick recap of that in the last segment of our program. But basically, the last word we have is the House Intelligence Committee, and that means Trey Gowdy, have invited, meaning demanded, Susan Rice to testify before them about these revelations of political spying using the nation's intelligence agencies. And this entire claim that Trump and Russia were working together was how they fooled the intelligence agencies into going along with them. So we're going to be taking a break. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, last segment of our program on this Tuesday. And we've got a breaking story now. We were talking just yesterday about how Great Britain had indicated that following the Brexit, they would continue to take care of Gibraltar, which is a strategic choke point at the entrance to the Mediterranean, obviously a very important place. And Britain has basically been in charge of Gibraltar for a very, very long time. Spain has taken the position that with Britain's joining of the European Union, that Gibraltar, rightly territorially, should go back to Spain, and Britain is saying no. We are now getting word that a Spanish warship has illegally entered the British waters off the coast of Gibraltar. And remember how the British overreacted in the Falkland Islands. And all that was at stake there were some sheep. So this is clearly a provocation by Spain. And it could get ugly very quickly. I think a war between Spain and England would be the end of the European Union, because everybody would be having to choose sides one way or the other. Or maybe all of Europe is just going to invade Great Britain and drag it back to being part of the EU. And I'm sure that the EU would not mind that one bit. That's why they've been talking about a European Union army. Edward Snowden has weighed in on this wiretapping situation and saying that when he worked at the NSA, from his desk, he could wiretap anyone, including the President of the United States of America. That's how pervasive the NSA's spy system on communications is. The New York Times is finally realizing where this is going. Earlier they were saying it's nothing, and of course they were caught covering up the story. They had this story weeks ago and didn't run it. Now the New York Times is running an article admitting Susan Rice's spying was politically motivated. They got the cooperation of the intelligence agencies with this nonsense story about Trump and Russia being together, which everybody now understands there's no evidence for it. And I can imagine these intelligence agencies are a little bit furious. This makes them look bad. It makes them look like dupes for being snookered into this thing. But this story is not going anywhere at all. We're going to keep it alive in the independent media. Sooner or later, the corporate media is going to have to deal with this. Remember when the Downing Street memo first surfaced, showing that the propaganda was being engineered around an already existing agenda to invade Iraq, and the corporate media ignored it for a whole month, and the independent media had it out there, until finally enough people were calling the corporate media saying, why aren't you covering this, that they finally had to report on it, rather than make it look like they were trying to bury this story. Well, they were trying to bury the Susan Rice story, and they're not succeeding. They're not going to succeed. We're going to keep this alive. You need to grab all of this material, send it to all your social media, send it to everybody on your email list. This is the biggest political scandal in U.S. history. It is 10 times what Watergate was, and we're going to dig out every single bit of it. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.